48 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on October 31st of 2022, the committee will resume its study on women and girls in sport. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of the screen or either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. In accordance with our routine motion, I'm informing the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. I'm just going to remind everyone that this is our trigger warning. This is a very difficult study, and before we welcome the witnesses, I would like to advise everybody we'll be discussing experiences related to abuse. This may be triggering to viewers, members, or staff with similar experience. If you feel distressed or if you need help, please advise the clerk. And also, you got the team up here. We always just try to make sure everybody's in good shape, so if there's any issues, let us know. I would now like to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, we have Lanny Marchand, Olympian athlete advocate. Andrea Neal, former women's national soccer team player and assistant coach. From the World Association of Ice Hockey Players Unions, we have Sandra Slater, who's the president of the North American Division, and Randall Gumley, who is a consultant. What we'll be doing is providing you each 5 minutes for your opening comments. I try to be flexible on these, okay? And so, when you see me start whirling my arms, try to bring it down to within 15 seconds, okay? So I'm now going to pass the floor over to Lanny. Lanny, you have your 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Lanny Marchand. I'm an Olympian in the 10,000 meter and marathon, former Canadian record holder in the marathon and half marathon, graduate of the University of Ottawa and Michigan State Colleges of Law, and a licensed and practicing attorney admitted to the Tennessee Bar and the Federal Eastern District Bar of the United States. I've spoken to you previously. In October 2016, I testified here about my experiences as a national team athlete, a female national team athlete. In my testimony 6 years ago, I highlighted the maltreatment and abuses I suffered at the hands of my federation, sexism, ageism, and sexual harassment I experienced by my own Olympic teammates. To quote my own testimony, there is little understanding of the development of a female distance runner and that age does not necessarily dictate results. The funding of athletes like myself, over 30 and female, often comes with performance requirements that are not set on younger athletes equally or on our male counterparts. I further went on to state, we expect our teammates to have our backs, not to comment on our backsides. We do not need men in the sporting world to proclaim they stand behind us as feminists because it gives them the perfect view to comment on our behinds. Instead, we ask them to stand beside us. I did not realize during my previous testimony that we were on the brink of the Me Too movement. Perhaps had I been more timely with my discussion points, I would not have been trolled, harassed, or further victimized online and by the sporting community. Since my testimony, I did not sit back and wait for you, my government, to step up and help fix the very broken system I was expected to compete and thrive in. Instead, I took my experiences, my education, and my desire to leave sport in Canada better than what I had experienced and joined forces with Athletes Can to be part of their Safe Sport Work Group. As part of that group, myself and several other athletes, of whom have appeared here before you, worked together on the maltreatment prevalence study that was circulated to current and recently retired national team athletes. In 2019, I became a member of the Sport Dispute Resolution Centre of Canada's Board of Directors. I am now in my second term. As a board member, I sit on the Complaints Committee and the Sport Integrity Committee. I'm not privy to the individual cases that come to the SDRCC, nor do I serve in any decision-making capacity on cases. I also chair the newly created Athlete Advisory Committee, which falls under the umbrella of the Abuse-Free Sport program here in Canada. My role there is to ensure that the athlete voice is heard and considered in the decision-making processes of the OSIC activities. Again, not in dealing with any particular cases, but in creating a system that is athlete-centered. It has been over these past 6 years of working with different sport and athlete agencies that I realized I was not alone in my experiences of maltreatment. It is where I realized just how normalized it is for athletes to be abused, demeaned, and suffer, all in the name of sport. I grew up a figure skater. I skated at the Champions Training Center out of Cambridge, Ontario, also referred to as the Carrie Leach Figure Skating School. I started there when I was in grade 3 and stayed through my first bit of high school. While there, I was weighed in weekly, fat tested monthly, and had the results posted on the wall for all to see. I was a preteen female and was made to share the dressing room with skaters much older than me, male included. It was normalized to be yelled at to the point of tears, and heaven forbid you get pulled into the dressing room number 6 with Carrie Leach. If you were not perfect, you were made to run laps of the parking lot. I guess the silver lining is that those running laps for me turned into running laps at the Olympic Oval. Many of my teammates were not nearly as fortunate. Nipple grabbing and discussing the development of my body was a daily occurrence, with older girls passing along tips on how to stay small, skip periods, or avoid going through puberty altogether. Male coaches and fellow skaters would prop us up on their laps to have chats. Because it was a pairs training center, it was normalized to have parts of your body touched by men and boys to demonstrate lifts or moves. Their hands would linger. The entire culture was toxic and overly sexed. I left that environment when I discovered running. My body dysmorphia stayed with me. I was fortunate to find my coach, Dave Mills, at the London Western Track and Field Club. I do not know if I would have survived my high school running career and professional career since without him. My university experience was not any different from my skating years. Yes, I was in the USA NCAA system, but I imagine it paralleled the experiences of my Canadian counterparts. There, eating disorders were part of what it took to be on the team. Coach Gauthier would openly discuss his favorite parts of our bodies. He would slut-shame the female runners and celebrate the guys for their dating activities. Any systems we had back then did not provide any solutions and certainly did not provide any protection to us, the athletes. In speaking up, we should not have to be afraid of losing our scholarships, our funding, our spot on a team, or access to services. How is it that my experiences in sport, dating all the way back to the 90s, and the fear that those environments thrived off of are still those same experiences described by athletes half my age today? I have done my best over the past 6 years to help this be part of a fix for the Canadian sports system. I have to ask, where were you? We have abuse-free sport up and operating in Canada, but it's taken so much pressure. Why has it taken so much pressure for you to let it have any teeth? Why did we, or do we, have to wait until this spring to see it be mandatory for every national sports organization to sign on to the program? It's been proven over and over that NSOs cannot be trusted to self-regulate. Athletes are not protected. NSO investigators ignore pleas from witnesses to look at the entirety of the toxic environment of a club and skating center. The goal seems to always protect the brand, protect the status quo. The concern falling more on protecting the career of an accused rather than the experiences and the career of the athlete. Athletes' complaints are not a standard HR complaint. We often do not have any lateral moves or other places to go. It isn't like we can just go pick another country to represent. In 2016, the High Performance Director of Athletics Canada, Peter Erickson, was fired for his abuses of power and his maltreatment of national team athletes, only to then be hired by On the Podium. Sport in Canada is incestuous. Where and how are we meant to feel safe? Where was my protection when I was pegged as the athlete to get Peter Erickson fired? Why did my testimony here 6 years ago fall on your deaf ears? To pursue sport, represent Canada, should not mean a decision between risking our physical, mental, and emotional health to achieve our goals, or the alternative is walking away completely because the system is broken. Athletes are screaming for a sporting system to provide a safe and protected space for us to speak up. We've been asking and now are demanding one. Why, after the maltreatment prevalence study demonstrated a toxic sport environment, when we demanded an independent mechanism for safe sport, did the application process require it be built and mandated that it be built and housed within an already existing entity? I spoke up 6 years ago. To quote again, I meant it very much when I said that the athlete cannot be the one constantly taking on these battles. I do not know if it's because of the background that I have or because at the end of the day, I don't care. I want to represent Canada. I would hope that you want me out there representing you. But if you guys don't want me there, then fine. I'll find something else and I'll excel at it. It might take more money and it might take more time, but the government and the different federations need to have our backs. If I'm willing to stand out and be vocal and face the retribution and retaliation of my federation, I would hope that I would be able to rely on you to come to my aid when I need it. We as athletes are now asking for more. I understand my perspective on the abuse-free sport program in Canada is unique. I've had a very unique view in its creation because of my roles. I understand the fear and disbelief in any system that is born out of programs and systems that were already in place. I'm not here to champion or tear down any program. I know the work we put in. I know the goals that we have. I'm here because I understand the importance of protecting athletes at any age, regardless of any ego, yours and mine included. I'm here because, despite everything I know about maltreatment and abuse in sport, I was still subjected to grooming and taken advantage of by a sports practitioner later in my career. My mindset and scope was so narrowly focused on stopping predators and abuses to those younger than me that I had a blind spot. We cannot afford any more blind spots. It isn't my job to fix sport in Canada. It isn't any athlete's job. I have done everything I knew to do to try, though. I suffered the retaliations. I had my Canadian teammates call me low-performing Lanny because without an Olympic gold medal, how dare I ask to be respected as an athlete and treated as a human? I ask again, what did you do these past 6 years to better sport in Canada? What are you actually prepared to do now?
Thanks very much. I'm sorry, as you're noticing, I am letting athletes go a little bit longer. I do recognize that this is very, very difficult testimony to give forward, so I do want to provide that extra respect for them coming forward. So thank you so much, Lanny. I'm now going to pass the floor I'm now going to pass the floor over to Andrea Neal. Andrea, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of this committee for inviting me to speak today and for your work in investigating these critical issues. My name is Andrea Neal. I'm a former player, captain, and coach for the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Canadian women's national soccer team. I spent 18 years as a midfielder, participating in 4 FIFA Women's World Cups as a player, a 5th as a coach in 2011, and a 6th as media in 2015. When I retired, I had the most international appearances for any soccer player in Canadian history. I have my UEFA A coaching license from Italy, and I was the first woman and 3rd soccer player to be inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. I have played sports my whole life, and I know it can be an incredible platform for honorable accomplishment, human development, and positive social change. Unfortunately, a pervasive, toxic, and unhealthy leadership paradigm in our culture today harms many people who participate and work in sports. It is a paradigm that uses the accumulation of power, prestige, and money as its compass points, not the development, support, and safety of those they are meant to nurture and build. I know that my speaking time is limited today. I will use it to share some examples from my soccer career that illuminate key areas to address if sports in this country are to be the flourishing developmental ground we need them to be. I am involved as my child learns to play now. I have long coached various age and playing levels, and my deep connection with the women's national team program runs from its founding members to players still on the team today. For years, and as recently as a week ago, I have observed and listened to countless stories of mistreatment, abuse, and corruption. A single instance should be unacceptable. The unrelenting pattern of repetition is alarming, and it must be learned from. For 15 years, I stood alongside a small group of women as they risked their financial, physical, mental, and emotional health to bring former national team coach Bob Berarda to justice for his sexual and psychological abuse of players. When I saw that Canada Soccer had quietly dismissed Berarda as a coach, conveniently shrouding the firing as mutually agreed and therefore enabling him to begin coaching girls again months later, these women took their experience to the police to prevent future harm. Canada Soccer could not be counted upon. Our national federation had completely failed at safeguarding, irresponsibly shifting his predatory behavior on. These women have been dismissed, diminished, and devalued as human beings by those who were responsible for keeping them safe. Even now, with Berarda's abusive behavior across 20 years of coaching established in a court of law, culminating in his guilty verdict and jail sentence, these victims are still waiting for a statement from Canada Soccer, still waiting for Canada Soccer to ban him from coaching. The Federation's response has been to insist their first failed investigation was thorough and extensive, to avert from rather than take responsibility. Only pressure by the Olympic champion women's team forced a further inquiry, which resulted in the revealing, however incomplete, McLaren report. Players have had to join hands across generations to force the current management in our national federation to begin to do the right thing, to properly look into things. I wished I could say I was surprised by the obfuscations and lack of accountability, but I had seen this sort of dodge before when my vantage point as an assistant coach in the national program made me aware of deeply concerning financial improprieties and organizational irregularities, which I helped to raise to no avail. Real leaders pay attention, they look, and they listen. But when athletes or staff have flagged concerns for Canada Soccer, this has not happened. And in fact, they've been dismissed. Those brave enough to call on them to do better have not been protected. Some have suffered retributions. Others silenced and smothered by non-disclosure agreements and clauses in employment contracts. We have seen with Hockey Canada that a lack of safety and a lack of transparency around funding are not two distinct problems. They reflect leadership that has lost its moorings. These issues combine and intersect to impede the development of people who deserve to be striving and thriving through their sport. My purpose is to use these examples to highlight the need for a new leadership paradigm, one based on trust, service, community, equality, consideration, and care. What kind of culture has Canada Soccer created in the past? What kind of culture will it set out to intentionally build now? Unfortunately, they have proven time and again they cannot regulate themselves. I call on our government to take meaningful action in support of transforming sports across Canada. Here are three crucial calls to action. Number one, we need a judicial inquiry into the culturally ingrained abuse within our national sporting organizations. I appreciate you convening this forum for feedback. Nothing can change until we turn the lights on and reckon with where we are. Number two, we need to rebuild our sports organizations with this self-scrutiny in mind. Clearly establish and communicate the portals for feedback and commit to looking into what they bring up. Make policies against retaliation for reporting. In a culture so awry, whistleblowers are essential in raising awareness and getting us back on course. Number three, commit to a comprehensive forensic audit into Canada Soccer's finances. Publicly disclose how funding is being used and why, to ensure the mission of the organization is being carried out ethically and effectively. Until we see things clearly and courageously create a new leadership culture in these organizations, the vulnerable members of our society will be continued to be put at risk. And the harm that I have all too often witnessed in my career will continue to happen. With awareness, effort, and a heart-centered compass point, we can head in the correct direction. but not without also investigating within ourselves what blocks our ability to see, support, protect, and care for another human being when they're in need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm now going to pass it over, and from the World Association of Ice Hockey Players, we're going to have Sandra or Randall, whoever would like to take the floor. It's a total of 5 minutes. Thanks.
I'm Sandra Slater, President of WEPU North America. We're here today to discuss athletes' rights in sports. 2022 was the first year a female was drafted into the Canadian Hockey League, the CHL. We're also here to discuss female management entrance into a male-dominated sport. As a female trying to break the glass ceiling, I've personally experienced disrespect bordering on abuse and discrimination by the CHL and previous executives of Hockey Canada, and I emphasize previous. As we witnessed at the Heritage Committee, the hockey industry is dominated by an all-white male, 60-plus years of age, and a long history of not recognizing women's influence in sports. As part of our documentation, you will see a letter from the CHL showing lack of respect for female leadership. We are here today to create awareness in the hope of creating change for athletes and female recognition in management positions. This experience is not limited to the hockey community. My personal feeling while addressing issues with the federal and provincial governments went unanswered, as I am a woman and because Hockey Canada's executives challenged WEPU's integrity after we notified the federal government of sexual abuses and hazing in correspondence dating back to 2018. A prime example is that WEPU contacted the Minister of Sport requesting an urgent meeting to discuss sexual and hazing abuses within the CHL. 9 months passed. We heard crickets. Upon retaining a lobbyist, the CHL was able to meet with the minister within 30 days to discuss, of all things, additional funding for the CHL during COVID. We also have submitted what we feel is a solution that will not only educate athletes on various forms of abuse, but also would be used as a reporting tool. Now you'll hear from my coworker.
Hi, I'm Randy Gumbly. I'm a consultant with WEPU. You're about to hear a story about a deeply flawed business model between the CHL and Hockey Canada that exploits young children. We use some strong language such as cartel, conspiracy, collusion. These words expressed don't come lightly and are not used without merit. In 1968, then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau appointed a special task force to investigate amateur sport in Canada and the effects which professional sport had within the amateur system. The task force found that amateur and professional sports should have no affiliation. They demanded that immediate and drastic actions be taken in the following areas: the supremacy of the hockey system, binding minors to contracts which denied players' rights and indentured players in the form of slavery, and how major junior hockey operated under the guise of the amateur system. The Downey Report of 1976 recommended the following changes: the creation of an abundance mint for hockey, prohibiting teams from entering into contracts with minors, restricting contracts and conspiracies that prohibited players the freedom to associate both in inter and intra-league, and the separation of pro and amateur sports. These recommendations help form what is known as Section 48 of the Competition Act. Sadly, a half-century later, these young children are still at the mercies of the NSOs in a cartel-like hockey group with the very same issues that are still alive and well today. To the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and to this committee, you have a vision. Your father had a vision to protect amateur sports and athletes in Canada. You passed laws to protect those athletes, but sadly, history has shown that all levels of government have failed to enforce the existing laws. This government now has an extraordinary opportunity to follow in the footsteps by enforcing the existing laws and recognizing athletes' rights. The Competition Bureau of Canada received a complaint from athletes in 2018 that involved the cartel hockey groups, which alleged a criminal violation of Section 48. The Bureau took nearly 4 years to review the complaint. While athletes face the real threat of fear of reprisal from NSOs and the CHL for speaking out about abuses, the Canadian government, still turn a blind eye to the blatant violations of the competition law, child labor laws, CRA regulations, and human rights violations. WAPU believes that the government's primary responsibility is to protect the rights and freedom of all individuals, which include children and athletes. We believe that the government must monitor, check, and if need be, curtail the powers of NSOs that exercise unreasonable restraints upon athletes' rights and freedoms. The direct result of the government non-action is quite evident. It created a higher supremacy within the hockey community, that hockey was untouchable and above the laws of Canada. This allowed a cartel to be formed, which runs right up to the very top echelon of hockey, the National Hockey League. The system as it stands today has a power imbalance in favor of the NSOs. This has dramatically affected competition and has put athletes in a vulnerable position. Canadians and governments, and this government, needs an inquiry to fully understand how we got to this point. Why did the Competition Bureau of Canada take 4 years to act on a complaint? Why are minors subject to a $500,000 release fee if they choose to leave the Canadian Hockey League and offer their services to another organization? Why did the NSO allow a professional sports league to benefit from insurance that was paid for by the amateur system? And finally, how is the CHL able to lobby across Canada, not only the provincial but the federal government, to change laws in the middle of an ongoing litigation? I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the testimony that we've had. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going into our questions. The first round of questions is 6 minutes each. I will try to keep it as tight to that 6 minutes so that more members get the opportunity to ask questions, because when I allow it to go on for too long, then we'll get fewer questioners. So I'm going to pass it over to Michelle Ferrari to start out off for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really want to thank our witnesses today. A lot of bravery here today, a lot of honest testimony. You can't change facts if you don't face facts, so I really appreciate all of you being here today. Some pretty damning testimony coming from all of you, and I think the first question I would have, Andrea, do you see an overlap of what Mr. Gumley and Ms. Slater have said in terms of soccer and hockey? Do you see an overlap there of what he's saying?
Yeah, I think this for me goes to leadership principles that have gone completely awry for what the purpose of what sport is all about. And there are so many links to what I've just heard and retributions for speaking up that I think we're just so completely lost with what this is all about. And if you have more specific questions, I'd love to focus this more.
Yeah, I'm getting, for sure. And I think what I'm seeing, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing a major problem with the process. Like, you go up the chain, you make a complaint, you do everything you're told to do, and nothing is happening. I'm getting a lot of nods. So I guess, Sandra, you said you went to the federal government, you made the complaint. What happened then, and what is your next call to action to have this seen through?
Well, nothing. Nothing happened. Randy, you did have one meeting, right? Yeah. So Randy was able to maintain one meeting with them, but nothing came out of it. That's why we're still here. I mean, this, and understand the abuse that's been suffered. Any elite athlete in an elite position is vulnerable to anyone of power because they truly control your life and your dreams. And us as parents, watching our kids in a sport like that, we live vicariously through our kids. We want them to have our dreams. These kids don't say anything to anyone when these abuses happen. And when you finally hear it after the fact, after they've finished what they're doing, I'm going to tell you, it's heartbreaking. And it's time after time after time after time. You hear the same stories. Let me give you an example. Daniel Carcillo. My goodness, the class action lawsuits. That man had okay, this is going to be graphic for everyone in here, a hockey stick shoved up his butt during hazing from older players. What are 16-year-olds doing playing with 20-year-olds in a league? Sorry. All these issues need to be addressed, and we need to be listened to, and we're not being listened to. It's been going on. We've been fighting this cause for 10, 11 years now.
I will say that we took steps. The first step we took was we reported it to the CHL.
Yep.
That fell upon deaf ears. We went to the NSO, which was Hockey Canada. That fell upon deaf ears. We went to the provincial governments. What did the provincial governments do? They changed the laws to favor the NSOs by changing labor laws.
Yep.
Then we went to the federal government, and we complained about the actual issues that Sandy's talking about and what we're here today. And nothing. And this is not just with this minister. This minister here has actually taken some action, and we're hopeful for it. I'm talking about, we've reported this since 2010. 10 with Balgazel. And it's the same issues. So when you're talking about the steps that we took, the players' last resort was to go to the courts. And what happened? We end up with 4 major class action lawsuits that have put Hockey Canada in an uninsurable position. For them to be able to access O&D insurance now, it's $2.1 million a year just for the premium. But who's paying for that? It's the amateur system and those players that are participating, and all because of the CHL's flawed business model.
Yeah, I think if we can get to the crux of this conflict of interest, I think that's what we're seeing repeatedly in this. It's who knows who, not doing what's right. And if I may, Andrea, you were talking about this coach, and I'm wondering if you can expand on that. And are the people the same on Soccer Canada? Are they the same who allowed all of this to happen? Because that seems just like a massive conflict of interest if the person you're making the complaint to is the people overseeing it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a pattern of behavior when you start to look, and why I shared that I can talk to the founding members, to the players now that are on the team. When you step back and look at the pattern of behavior throughout, you can see it through a different lens, and it becomes very clear. And so what happens when the reporting mechanism happens, the people investigating it, they decide the scope of that investigation. And so it depends on the perception that they have and their decision-making process around it. So with example of this, they very much were just focused in on, it looks like, reputation of their own organization. And the players were never really considered and cared for as far as the decision-making process. So their entire lens is focused in on more self-serving means and not for the actual role that they are there to support the players. And then you realize that over time, this pattern continues on, and there's dismissing language and a denial of responsibility, and on it goes, and the people involved can never get their healing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over for the next 6 minutes to Anita Vanderbilt. Anita?
Yes, thank you very much, and I just want to say thank you for being here. I know it's not easy to tell your stories, and I really appreciate that, because you're not just looking at yourselves, you're looking at trying to stop the harm from happening to other athletes, and that is something that matters. And I just want to start, actually, if I could start with you, Ms. Marchand. First of all, what happened to you is unacceptable. I wonder if you could, because now you're a lawyer, so you have, understand processes and you understand legalities. If you could, what would you have wished that you would have had as an athlete at that time that might have made things different? And by extension, what would athletes now need? What would have made a difference for you in processes and supports?
A safe place, somewhere where I could complain and talk about what was happening to me, and it not be investigated by the people I was complaining about. And that's how it works. Growing up in the skating system, Skate Canada used to have this program called monitoring. I wasn't quite at the level, but my sister was. And so if you were a national team athlete back then, you had a monitor assigned to you. So it was somebody that was supposed to be taking care of your interest. And these monitors would come and see the abuses that were at our club, see if my abuses are bad, I cannot even speak to what my sister went through being at a higher level than I was and what it did to her. And this person would see it and basically just say, okay, well, that's sport. And it's kind of the mindset of, well, I had to live through it, so now it's your turn. And with Athletics Canada and my experiences there, I should not have been deemed the athlete responsible for Peter Erickson getting fired. I definitely played a role. I'll acknowledge that. But I ticked all my boxes. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I almost got left off a second Olympic team. I didn't get to go to 2012 because of politics. So 2016, because my name was more known, because at that point I was the fastest woman in Canada, I had the community speak up for me, and still behind closed doors, right up until I towed the line at my first Olympic event, he was trying to get me removed from the team. In what world does an athlete get to thrive under those conditions, where your head coach does not even want you there? I don't know if it's on record here what happened out of University of Guelph and Dave Scott Thomas. He was the coach there, but he was also the high performance distance coordinator for Athletics Canada. And it was known that he was carrying on inappropriately, raping an underage athlete for years. And my first national team was on the team with her and Dave Scott Thomas and his wife. And I cannot imagine the terror and the horror that she had to go through, and knowing that everybody called her crazy. And she was so gaslit. And it took over a decade for him to be pushed out of sport and for someone to believe her story. And so what I want, what I think every athlete wants, is to be believed and to be heard, and not have someone push it under a rug or say, you know what, get to the next race, get to the next event, or you know what, even this allegation against this person could damage their reputation and their career. I didn't even get my Olympic ring. When you compete at the Olympics, you get a piece of jewelry. Mine got lost in the mail. I did not even ask for them to send me another one for years after, because I didn't want anything to do with my Olympic experience. And it had nothing to do with the running. I'm proud of the running. It had to do with everything else that got me to that start line and through those races.
I mean, the kinds of things you're talking about are unthinkable and completely unacceptable, and I'm really grateful that you're telling us about this. What really alarms me is that it's not just that you didn't have a safe space. It's not just that you weren't believed, but, and I've heard this from Ms. Neal as well, about retribution when you did try to speak out. And I guess what I want to know is, we're looking at processes. We're looking at how do we solve the systemic problems that seem to exist, and we're hearing it across so many sports. This normalization that you talked about. What processes, and you know, I know we've put some in place like OSIC and others. You know, what is it that could create that safe space where not just for whistleblowers who want to file a complaint, but also the needs that the athlete has, the psychosocial needs, the support, because you don't always just get from I want to file a complaint. You need to have options and support and advocacy and understanding, and maybe go through processes before you get to that. How would that look? You know, what would that process look like?
I would say, and we were talking about it earlier, that my human brain, very smart. I've got a lot of letters after my name that say I'm a really intelligent person. My athlete brain is stupid. It is dumb. It is dumb. I am really good at running reasonably quick and mostly straight lines. I know that. We need a system that's almost paint by numbers, because not only are athletes so focused, and to get to the level that I got to, you have to dial in and rely on the people around you. I ran on a torn labrum for 4 years, and it wasn't until I lost my funding and got booted out of the system that I got it fixed. We need a program, because when you're under that stress and being abused, it literally needs to be paint by numbers. It needs to be something we can just follow through with our very dumb athlete brains.
Lanny, thank you so much for having a sense of humor and running in a straight line. Thank you so much, because, you know, sometimes we just need to have a little bit of joy. So thanks for that funny quote. I'm going to pass it over to Adrienne LaRoche for the next 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank Ms. Marchand, Ms. Neal for your testimonies. My first questions, after hearing what you've said, I've realized that sports cannot govern itself. The different justice courts are currently attempting to offer athletes more rights. We're far from the end, but we've moved a lot since the Me Too movement. This movement here starts with parliamentarians and researchers. Mr. Gumley, thank you for raising awareness to the fact that sports need to comply to different legislation from departments other than Sports Canada. Can you give us details on how you can see complaints? That would be a good illustration of how government reacts when sports organizations send complaints versus when athletes who are victims of abuse send in their complaints.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. From our history, what we learned was, and I'll use the analogy that when we filed a complaint with the Competition Bureau in 2018 on a certain clause that was in a player contract, there was a $500,000 release fee that was mandated if the player in the CHL wanted to leave the league to go play in any other league other than the National Hockey League. We, under Section 48 of that Act, it's clear that the law says it's a criminal indictable offense if an organization imposes an unreasonable restriction upon an athlete. What we got back from the Competition Bureau was a 4-year delay in determining if what was unreasonable. They could not determine if $500,000 was unreasonable, and said that the law was imposed in 1975. No one ever acted upon it, so now we're going to change the law. We're not going to act on that. But what the time frame that happened with that was kind of impossible to understand. We filed a complaint in 18. The Department of Justice did an investigation in 2019, and then we heard nothing until Hockey Canada got called to the mat at the Heritage hearings for the abuse and the payment of funds. I get a call on Canada Day over a long weekend from the investigating officer at Heritage Canada telling me that they're not going to act on the complaint. To me, that was unacceptable. 4 years to find out if someone can't determine what was unreasonable, to ask $500,000 from a 16-year-old when he only makes $50 a week. And this is the action that we got. And this is not the only areas that was there with regard. So I don't even think that we need more laws. We have enough laws. You just got to enforce them. And no one enforces them because they're NSOs. They believe it.
You certainly seem to have more information to share on how the Canadian Hockey League operates and its impacts on athletes. Do you believe that we should change the changes made to the labor code because it operates throughout Canada?
For sure. Our position has always been that they should have been considered federal employees. They cross borders, they play international across the U.S. borders, they play within provincials, and we believe that they should be considered federal employees. And that would be the easiest thing to solve that issue about classifying these players as employees of the clubs. Remember, the federal government has already classified CHL players as employees in a 2001 Canada Revenue Agency court case, which held up upon appeal. But no one ever enforced that these players were, in fact, employees. In fact, it went the other way. The provincial governments said we're going to disregard the federal, and we're going to say, after the laws are changed, in order to mitigate damages in a class action lawsuit for noncompliance and wage and hour theft, we'll stop the clock from running and allow the teams to get off.
Parfait. Écoutez, Il me resterait une dernière.
I have one last question. There are currently 4 class action suits in hockey that have to do with abuse, maltreatment, and some with economic aspects. Have you spoken with directors of Sports Canada and the cabinet of the sports department, and should we have a different definition for abuse like they have in Quebec?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Justice Perel, in one of the court cases, stated that abuse comes in many forms, and financial abuse is one of them. These players within the CHL are definitely financially abused, and the provinces, every province across Canada, turned their blind eye. I really don't blame the ministers for changing those laws. They were lobbied under the false and misleading information that they received from the Hockey Canada and the Canadian Hockey League. So I believe that changing the federal law to classify CHL players as employees would be the first step.
Thank you. We're now going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. You said something, Madame Marchand, that really hit me. A couple of things, actually, just really hit my heart. You said believing, like we just want to be believed. And I think when you believe somebody, you respond with action. You testified in 2016. You're back here. Clearly not enough action. And you also spoke about your stupid athlete's brain, and I would say your battered brain, which really hit me. And it just kind of demonstrated to me how deep this is, the labeling. As I go through this study, this is very new to me. I was not sporty and barely passed my gym credits in high school. It was a battle at the time. This is all very new to me, but in the study that we've had, it's becoming very clear to me that the systems that are in place are not working. OSIC, talked about NSO, Hockey Canada, are not keeping athletes safe. Yet there seems to be a lot of pushback from federations in response to calls from victims for judicial inquiry. I know that you have a legal background, and I'm wondering if you could share why you think that there's pushback from federations right now for judicial inquiry.
Yeah, so it's not that I don't think OSIC is effective or can be effective. And I was part of the SDRCC who put in the request, or the government put out a call for applications to create a safe sport, abuse-free sport program. They asked that to be housed within an existing entity. So the SDRCC put forth their version of what they wanted abuse-free sport to look like. We ended up with what we have now, OSIC, the Safeguarding Tribunal, etc. Where I would say the athlete brain is coming into it in the NSOs is the NSOs don't want a separate system. Whether it's housed in the SDRCC or completely independent, the NSOs want to keep investigating themselves to allow it to continue to go on. They all have their own investigation systems or their commissioners that do X, Y, and Z, and that's not working. But so long as they can tell the athlete, oh, don't trust this system, keep it with us, we'll investigate. There's no way they can do this well enough. They don't have the specialty, the expertise in this area of sport. You're already not going to get the athlete buy-in. So whether it's OSIC or any other program, so long as we keep allowing the NSOs to have as much power and control as they do, no system is going to ever be fully functional and working.
So, and I mean, that's clear it's becoming very clear to me it's not functional. You shared a story, horrifying. But the thing is, like, this is what gets me in this study. We've known about this forever. I've seen so many documentaries on TV, like this. Knowing about abuse in sport, knowing about the governance structure of sport is certainly new to me. Knowing about abuse in sport, we've known for a long time. you spoke to the government. Like, you need to listen and you need to act. What could the government do tomorrow to make sure this abuse stops?
First of all, regardless of the person reporting the abuse, take it seriously, because that came from somewhere. Do an investigation on it. Don't leave it there. Investigate it. Don't rely on the NSO, because whatever policies and procedures and reporting mechanisms they have in place, they're clearly not working. Or these abuses would have been handled, they would have been reported properly, and the government would have heard about them. They would have been reported.
So, in terms of investigation, you said something, Mr. Gumbley? Yeah. You said that you filed a complaint about the $500,000. Heritage Canada got back after several years, saying they're not going to take action on the complaint. So I'm asking this because it seems to me like government departments are aware this is going on. Do you feel that they know what's going on, but they're failing in terms of taking appropriate action?
That's right. So it was the Competition Bureau. But let me tell you how fast the Competition Bureau acts. In 2020, September 15th, there was a class action lawsuit filed against the Canadian Hockey League and Hockey Canada for anti-competitive acts in the Competition Bureau against Hockey Canada, the CHL, the NHL. Within days, the Competition Bureau came out and issued a statement to protect the NSOs in hockey, saying they would not pursue criminally those who were involved in price fixing. Oh. The Competition Bureau came back within days of Hockey Canada and the NSO coming back in 2022 to protect the NSOs again. The Competition Bureau failed miserably to enforce the laws that were on the books, and they failed to protect the competitive balance within the leagues.
So do you feel? I mean, do you feel that because of all of these failures, that you kind of support the call for a judicial inquiry?
100%. There needs to be an inquiry into how all of these steps and the various levels of government, not only the federal but the provincial governments, how did you miss it?
Yeah.
How did CRA miss $150 million of revenue within Hockey Canada?
Yes.
How did the provincial governments miss that those players were classified by federal as employees and then changed the laws to protect, took away their level?
Thank you so much. We're going to get on to our next round. Our next round is 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5, 2.5. We're going to start with Anna Roberts for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. I'm really encouraged by your bravery. And Lana, I love your dog. I rescue dogs, so every time I see a dog, it just opens up my heart. So my question, Lana, will be to you. In your testimony, you talked about the abuse and being trolled from the Olympic teammates. Can you share with us some of the comments that were said?
Ooh.
If you're comfortable.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
It's more so I'll just try to clean up some of the language.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, when I testified last time, I spoke about everything. I wasn't as candid as I was now, and I wish I had been, but I think it shows where I was at with my healing journey, that I had to be very surface level last time that I was here. But even with that, I spoke about how we lose young girls from sport, because if you're going to sexualize and objectify me out there, what do you think the 13-year-old who's cheering for me, whose body is changing, who already through society is being hit with all these things of how she's supposed to look and be, and now instead of commenting on my performance, you're commenting on my behind, you think that little girl wants to go run in small shorts and a small crop top to race? No. And so I made comments about that, and what was received online, I basically was told that I should have come here in my panties to show you all what I'm really all about. Because how dare I show up dressed professionally here if I'm going to race in my skivvies out there? No one cared to ask me, why do I race in the kit that I race in? Sometimes it's all the sponsor gives you. And running is not pay the bills like other professional sports do. You are not going to upset your sponsors, especially as a female athlete. But it was comments like that, or when I spoke about the harassment and abuses from some of my other teammates, and just generally what it's like to be a female athlete out there, being told that what we all always hear. Well, if the statement was made by a good-looking guy, I would have bent over and taken it. But because it came from someone that wasn't attractive, of course I have an issue with that. Like, it's the same stuff we hear whether you're in sport or not. But the fact that I was brave enough then to come here and call out those behaviors and then didn't really see anything happen from here, but still was expected to go and compete and try to make more national teams, knowing that was how my testimony was received by the public at large and athletes at large, was more than disheartening. To sit here and talk about the ageism and sexism that I experienced, and I even said in my testimony in 2016 that I would lose my funding the next day, and I lost my funding the next day. And where was Sport Canada, where I literally am telling you there's policies in place in my NSO saying that I'm too old and that as a female, I have to hit this benchmark for competing. But if I were 25 or if I were male, the benchmark would have been here and I could keep my funding. NSO, my Athletics Canada, that was their policy. Sport Canada's response essentially was, well, they're the expert in your sport. We're not going to step in. We just give the funding based off their policies. So then I pled to you all. I said it can't be the athlete doing it. Did anybody check if Sport Canada changed that policy with Athletics Canada? No one here did. And so that policy eventually got softened, but that's because Peter Erickson got pushed out. It had nothing to do with Sport Canada or this government changing anything.
So my next question, in 2016, you mentioned the negative feedback you received from appearances, which you just explained to us, which is appalling, just absolutely appalling. So have you felt any pressures regarding your appearance here today, like you did in 2016? Did you get bullied? Were you threatened? Are you, would any of those situations occur?
I actually didn't publicize that I would be testifying here today. Ironically enough, trying to figure out what I was going to wear. I remember last time being so nervous because the blouse I was wearing had sheer sleeves. And I thought that I wasn't dressed because of my education and what I do in court. I felt like that wasn't necessarily the most appropriate attire. But I was at a training camp in Flagstaff when I got asked to come speak. And so I brought what I had. And I had this blouse. And this is very sheer today, but it was a white one, sheer sleeves. And I felt I was dressed inappropriate wearing that. And I still got trolled and ripped apart for how dare I dress the way I dress when I compete. This year, I opted for sheer again because I think it's just showing my personality a bit better that I'm going to wear what I want to wear and compete in what I want to compete in. But no, I didn't let hardly anybody know outside my family that I'd be testifying here today.
Thank you for your honesty. I know my time is up, Madam Chair. You're beautiful, so don't change.
Jenna Sutz. Jenna, you're on for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll share in my colleagues' thanks for all of you being here today and helping us understand and navigate as we work to make sport better for Canadian athletes. I'd like to direct my first questions to yourself, Ms. Marchand. One of the things you talked about earlier was about wishing that you had a safe place. And, I think it's important as we go through this work to make sure that we give thought to how better to support the mental health of athletes. And we've heard this a few times and from other witnesses. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to what support you wish would be in place now, moving forward for today's athletes to ensure that their mental health is protected as well.
Well, I would like to say thank you to Leah for acknowledging athlete brain can be battered brain, and they probably are synonymous, unfortunately. I think trauma-informed practices are of vital importance. If an athlete is going to speak up, it might not necessarily be to the person they're supposed to speak up to. They're going to just turn and say, I need help. Help me. And everyone involved in the sporting world, from grassroots up, needs to know what to do with that. And if you don't know what to do, go find someone who does. but don't leave the athletes standing there, because the courage it takes us to even admit that something might not be right, and to say like, I don't think this is right, or this is making me feel a certain way, or I don't even want to compete anymore, this is so bad. By the time you get to the point that you say it to someone, the fact that you're pushing the air out of your mouth and getting it out is the hardest step. And so we need trauma-informed practices. And whether you're a coach, a bodywork specialist, it really doesn't matter. That first step of any athlete disclosing needs to be to someone that understands just how heavy and how hard that moment is in that athlete's life.
Okay, thank you for that. One of the other comments you made was around, the system having teeth. And you spoke to the fact that coming this spring, it's mandatory for the NSOs to sign on with OSEC in order for their funding to be funded. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to your thoughts on that and whether you think that will improve the situation.
Yeah, I think we did it backwards. I don't understand why we created a system and then did not make it mandatory. It should have been mandatory from the get-go. Sport, unfortunately, is tethered to funding, and NSOs don't exist without it. So why weren't they required to be part of this system? Whether people want to buy in or believe OSIC can work or not, that's a separate discussion. You have to make everybody part of it first before you can even have any understanding of how well it will work. And to have athletes believe in a system, they need to see that their NSO is on the hook to it and falls under that umbrella. For athletes to have fought so hard for something like the abuse-free sport program here in Canada, we fought really hard. And it might not be shaped exactly how we wanted it to be, but the frustration that we at least got a little bit of a taste of something, and you're going to tell me that my abuses don't count because my NSO made the decision not to sign on, it should have been mandatory from day one. It absolutely should have been mandatory from day one.
Thank you for that. And I respect, appreciate those comments. As we move forward and we see that NSOs are going to be required, and I open this up to anyone, are required now to sign on, what impact, do you think that will have an impact to improve the situation?
I'd like to address that one.
Sure.
Sure. I'd like to read something to you. Please be assured that the federal government conducts a thorough and rigorous screening process to ensure that all federally funded NSOs, including Hockey Canada, maintain a well-defined governance structure and code of conduct. That was a letter from the Minister of Sport sent to me in 2016 and 2018. At that time, Hockey Canada definitely did not have a well-defined structure, code of conduct. As we know now, they failed that miserably. Nothing was done. In our situation, the CHL does not fall under Hockey Canada. It does not fall under the NSO. It does not fall under this type of a governance. They would have to sign on to that individually because they are in limbo. They claim that they're amateur to get amateur breaks on insurance, but actually they're a professional league. They have players, 168 players that play in the league that have in excess of salaries of $300 million. How is that an amateur league? So what we think, one of the areas that we have is that the NSOs need to be held accountable. The funding to Hockey Canada means nothing, but we think that the appointment of the NSO, which represents at the Olympic Committee in order to qualify for World Championships games, is the bigger carrot that the government could impose. If they don't fall within funding, we're going to find another organization and another board to represent those athletes, and that could be across the board.
Thanks very much. I'm now going to pass it over for 2.5 minutes to Audrey LaRoche. Audrey?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ms. Marchand, Ms. Neal, thank you for your testimonies. They've confirmed that we truly need an in-depth review of all sports in Canada, not only one sport at a time, one scandal at a time. We really need an independent investigation to highlight all the issues. My next question for Mr. Gumbly. In under 1 minute, you talked about the issues of the Competition Bureau. Can you tell us in 30 seconds what you meant?
To enforce the laws of Canada, and that resulted in the players going to the courts, which caused now the Hockey Canada insurance to skyrocket. It's an $825 million class action. It's a lot of money.
Madame Slater.
Ms. Slater, you wanted to share with us your experience and tactics used by sports organizations, and in your case, it's Hockey Canada and the Canadian Hockey League. And when you tried to raise awareness for athletes' issues, or before sharing this to parliamentarians, do you believe that this shows the power of these different sports organizations?
Absolutely, yes. I went to Quebec National Assembly to try to fight the changing of the law to get the kids removed from the labor law, ESA. And I was literally threatened with the Friday before with a lawsuit that if I say anything for libel, I was threatened with them. Now, upon that, I was going to bring a player. He chose to come with me, and an agent was going to come with me. That agent chose not to, for fear of reprisal that he would lose and not be able to have any more young players come to him to be his agent. So he took it very seriously. He regretted not going. I didn't care because I did the right thing. You know, I had to speak up for these players. No one else was going to do it. So, yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And if anyone wants to answer an independent inquiry on sports, if you had to say anything, do you believe that it could change things?
If we have the right people in place that actually listen, I do believe that change can happen, but what did a principal say? I've been fighting things my whole life. I have children.
Sandra, our time is
I got to say this
really
quick.
short.
Unless you expose something and let the sunshine shine on it, it will not heal. It's the exposure of these things that are going to cause change and awareness. End of it.
Thanks very much. And we're now passing it over to, Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. This is horrifying because we know this is going on, and from the testimony, it's clear there's not enough action, and we're talking about the abuse of kids. But we're also talking about the harassment and fear of people coming forward. You said something, Madame Marchand, about not telling anybody that you were coming here because of fear of reprisal. Are you afraid of people, coming after you, or has that occurred?
I just didn't want to deal with it until I have to. So obviously this is public record and it will be streamed, and I have a thicker skin and a better system. My support animal's here with me. Yeah. I have a better way of handling it this go around than I did in 2016. But yeah, I just didn't want to, how do I put this? I didn't want people that already are like the naysayers and the people that aren't necessarily the biggest fan of me to tune in and just try to find another reason to troll me. Yeah. I'd rather, if people happen upon this and listen to my testimony, they don't have to agree with me. But if you're looking for it because you are interested in it. You're not looking for it to poke holes or try to tear me down like you did in 2016.
Okay, thank you very much. Madame Neal, where do you work right now?
I work for the Coaching Compass, my own company.
Okay.
On leadership training.
Okay, and what does that employment contract look like? Like, one of the things that, and I'm not saying this is true to your contract, is this kind of practice of non-disclosure agreements. is your contract, even though it's are you required to sign a non-disclosure agreement? That prevents you from discussing matters in detail, is that?
So when I worked for Canada Soccer as an assistant coach, one of the clauses within my contract prohibits me from talking about details, certain details, which financial, personal, organizational. To show up here means that I'm invoking the parliamentary privilege to do so. But if I talk negatively against the Federation, I risk being sued.
Okay, so there seems to be kind of this code of conduct that in place that is kind of favors the federations and organizations and not necessarily the athletes. Is that, do you agree, disagree?
Absolutely. There's I think the formal codes of conduct and then the informal codes of conduct, and people within the organization can pick and choose. So in my case, when I reported with the Bob Berarda situation, it was anonymous. When I reported certain financial irregularities, it was me and the head coach at the time. And there were certainly retributions at that point, and I hadn't signed a contract. Retributions were happening.
Can you give me an example of retribution? What does a retribution?
So everything was great before.
Oh, Leah, it's okay.
It was something along the lines of offering a contract before and then having a great difficulty getting paid after. I had certification that was blocked and in the process as well.
Awesome.
And everything was great before, and then after, there were cases, and it went on for 2.5 years.
Thank you so much. Leah, you're really good at this because with me, I'll just let you keep on asking, eh? To the panelists, thank you so much for being here today. I think as we're shining the light on what we're seeing, this is one of our last days. You're really bringing to light the need to look deeper into some of these things. I do thank you all for coming, and I hope that I recognize for specifically two of you as coming as individuals. I hope that you will be able to leave this place with no harassment, no trolling, and to continue to be strong for coming here and standing up for the rights of all athletes. So thank you very much for putting all of the weight on your shoulders. There's a whole bunch of us that will help you carry that water. Thank you so much. We're going to suspend just for Randall, you had... Randall, we usually don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of the closing if there's, okay. Anyway, I will be suspending for about a minute. We've got to get some people up online, and so we'll switching panels. Thank you. Are we good, Danielle? I'd like to reconvene the second panel of today's study. Today we are going to be welcoming from Athletes Can in the room. We have Andrea, and I'm Prosky or Prosk? Proska. Fantastic. She is the Vice President. Online from the Canadian Paralympic Committee, we have Karen O'Neill, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Michelle Killens, who is the Director for Paralympic Performance and Pathways, as well as Erica Gravel, who is the PhD candidate and Vice Chair. And online, we also have from Swimming Canada, Ahmad El Awadi, who is the Chief Executive Officer. Each organization will be provided 5 minutes for opening comments, and we will turn the floor over to Andrea Proska for the first 5 minutes.
Thanks so much. So yes, my name is Andrea Proska. I'm a rower, a two-time World Cup medalist, Olympic champion, and Athletes Can Vice President. I also stand before you as a survivor of a toxic training environment. Sadly, not a new story, but if you'll bear with me, I also bring concrete proof that Olympic medals can be won through culture. Unlike other athletes you may have heard from, I began sport at the mature age of 27 as a hotel manager with years of leadership experience. En route to the national team, I would brave numerous setbacks and serious injuries, including being struck by an SUV. Through it all, I persevered because I wanted nothing more than the privilege of wearing the Canadian maple leaf on the world stage. Neither my decade of real-world experience nor my resilience would spare me from the abuse that followed. While Rowing Canada shone on the world stage, for 4 years, our National Training Centre environment allowed for 46 women to experience manipulation, isolation, abuse by an autocratic coach who ruled our lives, Dave Thompson. Physical punishments were meted out for perceived indiscretions. Teammates were seen as rivals to be beaten. Selection race results kept secret, and booking time with a physiotherapist considered a sign of weakness. He controlled the minutiae of my life, restricting me from seeing health care professionals, mental health professionals, and talking to my support network. The ripples of his culture of fear went well beyond the athletes. I'll never forget a support staff worker telling me, "I wanted to quit so many times. I couldn't because I knew you women it would be worse off for you if I left. You'd have no one to protect you." Every time I was told I was too fat, too slow, too difficult, I believed him a little more. The environment became normalized, steeped in favoritism. He was a master manipulator who openly told me he preferred working with younger athletes. They followed directions. They didn't ask questions. I worried when athletes commented that he would end phone calls with, "I love you," and not hang up until they said it back. I worried about him buying gifts for them. I worried about the one-on-one coaches meeting in his hotel rooms. And yes, my deepest fears were realized later when I learned about the private dinners, sexual harassment, and sexual abuse my teammates endured. I'm trying to forgive myself for silently witnessing this abuse. In many ways, the Olympic medal came at the cost of my own self-worth. Too many times I had to choose between my moral compass and my Olympic dreams. In 2020, Rowing Canada quietly let Dave Thompson go before a safe sport investigation would confirm the bullying, harassment, and abuse. He went on to work for other countries and even an all-girls school. There are no words for how angry this makes me, but I promised you a happy ending. Our wonderful new coach, Michelle Darville, inherited a group of burned-out, broken women and immediately prioritized rebuilding culture, trust, and teamwork. She would say strange things like, "Good job, I'm proud of you." At the time, it felt nothing short of revolutionary. We were encouraged to show our unpolished selves, be vulnerable, hold each other to account. Gone was the secrecy of the previous regime, replaced by complete transparency and open communication. And for the first time as a national team member, I felt I owned my journey. I was creating culture from the bottom up. I was driving a training environment I could thrive in. We were reimagining high performance, and I welcome any questions to speak deeper on this case study. I have since seen my story reflected in countless others across Canada. We're witnessing some of the strongest women in Canada reach their collective breaking point. If 2020 was a time for listen, 2023 must be a time for action, and here are 3 steps. 1, O6 services need to be accessible to all levels of sport and adequately funded, with culture tied to NSO funding. 2, we need a comprehensive and compulsory education for sport stakeholders on all types of abuse. We need bystander training. 3, we need a restorative justice approach that does not cause victim re-traumatization. I am so grateful for being here today, but as you can see, it is tough to sit through this emotional scar tissue and relive it. In closing, when I started working with Michelle, I knew it was up to us to prove that her method of coaching could win medals, and here I stand, Olympic champion, showing you another pathway to gold. It's not an easy one. You will need to show the perseverance and confidence and courage that women across the nation have. Every athlete knows a podium doesn't come overnight, but I know in this, Canada can stand on the world stage as champion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and we are here to support you, and thank you so much for coming. We're standing up with you and standing by your side as you come forward, so thank you. I'm now going to turn it online, and we'll have the Canadian Paralympic Committee. I'm not sure who's going to take the floor for the committee, but you will have 5 minutes. It looks like Karen has her mic there, so perfect. Karen, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and respectfully recognize the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people across Canada. I would also like to recognize all who have come before to share how they faced abuse and those who still live with trauma silently, and listening today to the experiences shared by Lani, Andrea, and Sandra. I'm accompanied by Paralympian CPC board member and CPC Athlete Council Vice Chair Erica Gavel and CPC staff member Michelle Killens. She's the director of our Paralympic Performance and Pathways, and we're all available to answer any of your questions when the time arises. The CPC, or Canadian Paralympic Committee, is a non-for-profit organization with 27 member sport organizations dedicated to strengthening the Paralympic movement and inclusion through parasport. We work to create a safe, inclusive, and welcoming culture, a culture and environment that supports each participant while respecting and valuing their experience, voice, and diversity, whether on the field of play or in their development as individuals and leaders. We're guided by athlete leadership and experience to create greater access to opportunity that is both safe, supportive, and welcoming. And I'd like to share a few examples. Our flagship athlete discovery program, the Paralympian Search, was consistently yielding significant lower participation from women, a reflection of systemic underrepresentation of women with a disability in sport. In response, Paralympian Elizabeth Walker-Young, who also works in diversity, equity, and inclusion, was hired to develop the framework for a pilot event focused on women's needs, with the goal of providing a safe and welcoming space for women and girls on their parasport journey. And also, to better understand women and girls' experiences in parasport, several projects were conducted to support safe and inclusive environments. This included working with national sport organizations that collected data from team members so that their athlete experience and voice was heard, was held, and would lead to positive change. As well, a research study, Safe, Inclusive, and Accessible Sport, was completed by Paralympian Stephanie Dixon and her colleagues. This and other Paralympic-specific research on safe sport were completed because most data and insights of current research was not as inclusive nor representative of a Paralympic athlete's experience. In addition, and at a leadership level, the Paralympic movement is strengthened by the fact that the CPC Board of Directors includes a high ratio of female Paralympians, Erica Gavel, Michelle Stillwell, and Cindy Willett. In addition to our CPC Athletes Council, which also includes Paralympians Ina Forrest, Erica Gavel, Amy Burke, and Abby Tripp. These individuals reflect their own experience directly on diversity, equity, inclusion, and safe sport, and through their leadership, contributing towards reimagining our sports system going forward. Several building blocks to a safe sport culture across Canada, including absolutely ensuring more women, more diversity, and more athletes with a direct voice are supported in leadership roles. Second, The concept of education was mentioned several times, to be clear not only what it doesn't look like when it's not safe, but to be clear on what a quality, inclusive, and safe sport environment and culture looks like. Also, it was referenced several times this afternoon, governance, and we need to look at some of the assumptions and implicit biases in our current governance infrastructure and policies. And lastly, at the federal, provincial, and territorial governments ensure strong collective and focused leadership to address safe, inclusive, and quality sport. In conclusion, the CPC believes in belonging through sport. We are committed to a quality, inclusive, welcoming, and safe sport environment, and this is non-negotiable. We are definitely committed to doing better. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Awadi. Ahmad, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Ahmad, if you could, you have to take your mic, check off the mic. You know, we'd think that we'd all know that after 3 years, but I still do it myself. So you've got the floor, 5 minutes.
Thank you for inviting me to speak here today on behalf of Swimming Natation Canada. I would like to thank the committee members for all your hard work and investment in this imperative topic. I would especially like to acknowledge the athletes, victims, their family, and their friends for having the courage to appear here and share their experiences and their stories. I've been the CEO since July of 2013 and would like to share a glimpse of our sport and our organization. We consist of over 75,000 registrants, in addition to thousands of volunteers. Our women's team are in the top 6 in the world and account for many of the best performances Canada's ever seen. Across officials and athletes, we are virtually 50-50 in terms of men and women. In participation with Life Saving Society, there are an estimated 1.5 million children in various types of swimming lessons across the country. We are an approximately $9 million organization. About 2/3 of that come from government sources. Because we are relatively well funded in comparative to some smaller sports, I'd like to recognize we've been able to implement some safe sport practices, projects, programs, systems that many other NSOs might not be able to. We feel we've done many things well, but like all sports, we need to look in the mirror and see where we can do better. When I started there was a lack of women in leadership positions, a lack of human resources in general. We've grown from 10 staff to 50 staff. The majority of our employees are women, including multiple senior managers and one of our senior directors. 4 of our 9 board members are women, including our current president and our past president. With the assistance of the Canadian Olympic Committee, Canadian Paralympic Committee, the Government of Canada, we have developed a safe sports system focusing on education, prevention, and response. We consulted heavily with our friends at USA Swimming who had a head start on us, and they were glad to share tools and resources with us. Our provincial sections and the Canadian Swim Coaches Association all worked with us to navigate a very complex jurisdictional challenge, lack of available funds or resources, and specifically complex case management. In 2016, we began to roll out a national program that addressed issues, complaints, allegations via an independent safe sport officer. We've strengthened our response by signing on with OSIC, and our existing program will remain in place as our OSIC partnership grows and in areas that they may not cover. We want all participants to have a safe place to come forward in a safe environment during the most difficult of situations. The OSIC is a key building block for the sports community to continue strengthening the safety of all participants. It will take time for everyone to understand OSIC's role and to start to see the positive effects. It will need to be supported all the way down to the grassroots level. But everyone in our sport is committed to ensuring a healthy and positive environment and maintain a safe and inclusive culture for all. Once again, thank you for your important work with this committee, and we welcome any questions you may have as we work together to make sport as safe as possible.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for your testimony. What we'll be doing is we'll be going around for our first round. The first round will be 6 minutes for each party, and we'll start off over to the side to Anna Roberts. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to address my first question to Ahmad. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I have a couple questions for you. Were you the director of Water Polo Canada at some point?
Previously, I was the director of Water Polo Canada.
And what year would that have been?
That would have been 2005 to 2013.
Okay. And were you aware of the abuse by Dan, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing these names properly, Dan Bertinelletti, Pat Oakton, and Guy Barker, what they had committed under your employment?
Guy Bar. So let me go through those three. There were Dan Bertolet, and some of the issues with Dan predated when I started there. Patrick Oaten was there during my time, and we did not receive complaints or allegations against him during my time there. And Guy Baker came on near the end of my term at Water Polo and was dealt with another CEO.
Okay, are you named in this lawsuit?
I'm not.
And so you're not aware of any allegations against you or the situation that occurred while you were the CEO at Water Polo Canada?
No.
So they were under your employment, is that correct?
Sorry.
Were they under your employment during your time at Water Polo Canada, yes or no?
All three were. Guy Baker was in my final year.
Okay. So they were, you were aware of them. So then my next question is the plaintiffs, Sophia Baron LaSalle, Katerina Monton, Stephanie Val, and other athletes that weren't named because of their fear of repercussion. Were you aware of these allegations? Were they brought to your attention?
They were not. No.
So they were never brought to your attention because they, from what I understand, they were in the team from 2004 to 2016.
I left in 2013, so I know those athletes, but they did not raise those allegations.
So the lawsuit has nothing to do with you?
No.
So can I ask you then, with the situation of these athletes coming forward, what could you have done as the CEO of Water Polo Canada to ensure that this doesn't continue in Swimming Canada?
Okay, so to answer that, I think the steps we've taken at Swimming Canada is to provide an avenue for athletes to come forward to our independent officer. And just to be clear with our independent officer and some lessons that we've learned, our independent officer can execute policy without consent of the board or executive management. They listen to allegations, complaints, and can invoke policy directly without having to come to the organization
so I'm not,
directly.
I'm sorry, my time is limited and I want to get to a very important part. In a toxic environment that we've heard from many, many athletes, what would you say would be the proper procedures to put into place to ensure the safety of all the athletes under your jurisdiction?
I think the ability, aside from education and prevention, education and prevention are key elements, but in terms of response, having a place for athletes to be able to come feel comfortable, feel safe, be able to speak and report and have policies, whether they're investigations, disciplinary matters, and mental health services in a safe environment.
So can I also ask, how much money do you receive from the Government of Canada on an annual basis?
Swimming Canada receives roughly between $6 and $7 million. However, many of those funds are heavily restricted to high performance and the high performance program for events.
So these funds have never been frozen as far as you're concerned? Like the government's never come to you and frozen any of these funds?
No.
So if the athlete is not a high performing athlete, do you lose money?
That's not necessarily how the way it works, but that's based. Funding is based on
because you just said that it's for high performance athletes. So I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't understand.
The high performance program. So the program is funded through recommendations, through presentations on the podium, and that money is then recommended to the Government of Canada.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now going to turn it online with Sonia Sidhu. Sonia, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all the witnesses for your testimony and sharing your lived experience. And it is heartbreaking. I just want to thank you for your bravery and adding to your important work so we all can build a safer supports environment in Canada for women and girls. So my first questions to Ms. Praska from Athlete Can. You spoke about moral compass and Olympic dreams. We want both to be reality. How does Athlete Can support athletes who have come forward with complaints of misconduct in support, and what resources are provided?
Athletes Can, our job is to amplify. So those who may not be aware, Athletes Can is an independent nonprofit. We are run by athletes for athletes. We represent the 64 national teams. And we just see our job as being a unified place to amplify that. We have had a hand in doing pulse check with our athletes for a long time. In 2019, we ran a Safe Sport Summit, which later on ended up, apologies for referencing my notes, I do have a bit of a Swiss cheese brain. We ran 2019, it was Safe Sport Summit, thank you, that based on the 7 key consensus findings, we passed it on to Sport Canada. That resulted in a provincial and federal summit, and eventually down the line to the UCCMS and the OSIC. We did a pulse check last year as well, and we're really excited. I see our job as directing people to the many resources that there are and making sure that there's no gaps. So we're working on an athlete hub as well to have a one-stop shop, because athletes should be focused on the important work, which is head down and being the best athlete that they possibly can be. It shouldn't be their job to be on top of all of the minutia of governmental change and policy change.
As a follow-up, you talked about OSIC services and funding accountability. Do you believe that OSIC is an essential mechanism for athletes, and how does it force national sports organizations to adopt?
As someone who made a career out of being first at the finish line, I'm eager for this to be fully developed to where I know that it can be. It's only 6 months old, and so I'm really excited to see what will happen when everyone signs on in April. I do wish that we had these services a long time ago, and I know that it's not perfect. I would love to see on the provincial level, on the local level, OSIC powers expanded. I think it's far from perfect at the moment.
Thank you. And my next question are to Ms. Anil from the Canadian Paralympic Committee. You talked about safe and inclusive support. Can you describe your approach to working with the supporting athletes who have disabilities and how this impact their experiences in support?
Sure. Maybe I'll start off and then perhaps even ask Erica from an athlete's perspective to respond. I would say that we see a fundamental strong link between diversity and inclusion and with safe sport, because if you are able to address what a safe, welcoming, inclusive environment looks like, you will probably reduce your chances of harm and maltreatment. So we believe that they're inextricably linked. As a games organization, we organize and support on behalf of Canada, the Canadian Paralympic team for 3 sets of games every 4 years. The Parapan team, the Summer Olympic team and Paralympic team, and the Winter Paralympic team. From an organizational standpoint, we would be scrubbing down on all the details during a games period. For instance, how athletes are even prepared through our sport members and in partnership with our sport members before they even go to the games, and especially those that might be the first time to head to the games, their first games experience. While in the village, there's built-in support structures to ensure that, again, the sport managers and the athlete and the sport-specific teams are well taken care of, have a response mechanism should anything be required immediately, and also at a very fundamental level, even with the number of people, room allocation, and linkage with the staff. Erica, perhaps a comment from an athlete perspective and experience?
Yeah, I'm very in agreement with Karen's comments. I think one of the biggest differences when you're comparing able-bodied athletes to para-athletes is just the understanding that there really is a disability component, and people end up in sport, in parasport in particular, through different avenues. I'm going to assume that someone with a congenital disability is going to have a different sport upbringing than someone perhaps with an acquired impairment later on in life. And I think from an athlete's perspective, and I guess I'm just speaking on my own perspective right now, a safe and inclusive environment just allows the athlete to feel comfortable being who they truly are. Yeah, I just think that parasport is so dynamic, and there's just, even from the coaching aspect, everything is just very different than able-bodied.
Thank you. And for the follow-up question, how can we make sure that access to inclusive mental health professionals for athletes can be expanded? What do athletes need, especially with living with disabilities, or any athlete who need, that services? How we can expand the access to them?
A very quick, short question, if you don't mind.
I'm going to ask Michelle very quickly to respond to that question, particularly through the mental health support services available.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So quickly, we do have a mental health lead within our organization, because we recognize that there were quite a few gaps with our para population to be able to access mental health, and we don't know all the reasons why. And so we're actually looking into developing some research and talking to our athletes to better understand what some of the gaps are to accessing mental health, so that we can better create programming for them.
Thank you so much. We're now going to turn it over to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la...
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank Ms. Proska, Ms. O'Neill, Ms. Killens, Ms. Gavel, and Mr. El Awadi for being with us today. This is a very important study on women in sports. Ms. Proska, how can you explain where does your funding come from?
We are funded through Sport Canada, but we're a completely independent organization.
Mais vous êtes financé.
But you're funded by Sports Canada. That's where your funding comes from.
Parfait. Une autre question.
Another question. I would like to know, for Swimming Canada, Mr. Alawadi, how much does it cost you annually to be a part of OSIC, and what is covered in that agreement?
Excuse-moi, j'ai manqué le...
Apologies, I didn't hear interpretation. Just to confirm, BCIS is OSIC in English? Annually? For our national level, that's about $20,000. And that amount will increase with each phase in the different jurisdictions. We have the provincial and municipal levels.
Pouvez-vous revenir?
Can you come back on what is covered by that agreement with OSIC? All of our volunteers, our athletes, our employees and coaches at the national level. The Olympic, Paralympic teams, any level, at any team at the national level. And where does your funding come from for Swimming Canada? About $6 million from the Government of Canada, but we also receive funding from the provincial governments depending on events. Most come from registration fees or from other organizations. This could be for Ms. Praska or for Ms. Elawadi from Swimming Canada. We know that since 2018, national sports organizations have to declare cases of abuse to Sports Canada. So how many cases have you detected, and to whom did you transmit this information?
Ça, c'était la question pour moi.
I think that question was for me. About 15 since 2018. And we share that to Sports Canada, share that with Sports Canada directly. We have someone who makes reports depending on when we receive an official complaint or when we started the official process. And for Athletes Can, you also have to share cases with Sports Canada. How many have you shared, and to whom did you share this information?
I don't have any numbers for you. I wish I did, but our role is to help guide athletes to the proper resources. So we do also work with the, I believe, Western University Sports Solution, which offers a legal counsel if they are going into appeals process is the word that I'm looking for, but we don't handle safe sports issues.
Et combien ça vous coûte?
And how much does it cost you to be a part of OSIC?
Again, another great question that I don't have that information for, but I can find for you.
Okay, parfait. Et je terminerai.
Perfect. And I have one last question in 30 seconds for Ms. Elawadi. You talked about a designated person. Who is that person at Swimming Canada?
Présentement, je peux le nom du.
I don't have that person's name in front of me, but I think their first name is Raphael, but I'd have to look at the list because it's a different team that would manage that information.
Now I'm going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. And just a follow-up from Adrienne Laroche. If you could submit that information to the committee, that would be very helpful. My first question is for Mr. Al-Jawadi. Is that right? Swimming Canada?
Yes, Elawadi. Yes.
Alawadi, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I'm just looking at a news article, July 24th, 2012. Were you the executive director at the time where Guy, let me just check. Sorry, Guy, what is Guy's last name? Baker. When he was hired. Were you the executive director?
I was, yes.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that. You're quoted as saying, in quotes, Guy is one of the most widely respected coaches in water polo, said Al-Jawadi, Wawadi from the WPC's head office in Ottawa. There is no other coach on the planet who has had more success in women's game, and we're absolutely thrilled that he's on board to lead the program into the next Olympic Games. 2022, the lawsuit comes out, $5.5 million lawsuit. Daniel Sauvageau. Right? Sorry. Sorry about the name brutalization. And this is what the quote says from the article. It says, the lawsuit also outlines critiques of some of national team sports staff. Velen allegedly went on to WPC support staff member Daniel Sauvageau in 2013 about Guy Baker's bullying and outbursts, expressing her fear of working with him. So you said he was the best coach ever. And I'm wondering what standards in terms of hiring practices, oversight, are used when you say this is the best coach ever. And I've used teaching practice a number of times. For example, all educators in Manitoba have to pass a child abuse registry check. And what I'm finding with this is that people just have to have good technical expertise. So outside of good technical expertise, what kind of characteristics did he have to show to demonstrate he's the best coach ever?
Well, I can't. I'm not comfortable speaking past 2013. I was not with the organization anymore. So during that hiring,
no, but
process,
you were there to hire him.
Yes,
and he ended up being another abusive coach. So when you hired him, what standards were in place to say he is the best coach ever?
Guy underwent an extensive hiring process. We had partners at the table. We did reference checks. He came from the NCAA and USA Swimming, both of which he had an extensively long career of over 20 years.
So what is that still, if you could submit to the committee, the formal process used for hiring, just because I have a limited amount of time, and I think that would be helpful. Because I'm not getting a clear understanding of the hiring process verbally, and I don't have much more time. So if you could submit that to the committee, that would be great.
I understand that, but I wouldn't have access to Water Polo Canada's documents from 2012.
Okay, that's fine. I'm sure we'll find another way. I'll move on to another question for you. There's been a lot of criticisms about NSOs and NSO's failure in many cases to participate in thorough investigations. And because of this, abuse continues. One of the things that victims are calling for is a judicial inquiry. Do you support a judicial inquiry?
I do. I would support that and other forms of audits that would help augment the system as well as make it a safer place.
Thank you very much for that. When you say other kinds of audits, what would that include?
Cultural audits, as an example. safe sport audits as another example. So all those things, very similar to what we're required to do financial audits, those other types of audits would be able to shed light on strengths and weaknesses and areas for improvement across the board.
The former sports minister called for a judicial inquiry. And I think in terms of testimony we've heard so far, those calls are growing both by victims, sports organizations, federations. Do you, as the executive director, would you be open to participating in a judicial inquiry should that occur?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. How long do I have?
Okay. Well done.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't going to let you get me this time, Leah.
I saw a hand.
I know.
I
This
saw a
is how she
hand.
just goes.
I didn't know if it was
Yeah.
the hand or the hand.
Leah knows me. She knows how to work me. We're now going to pass it over for the. Okay, so this is where you guys can all say, Karen. We have 9 minutes. So we're going to go 3, 1.5, 1.5. Okay, I like to use every minute to the time. So, Dominique, you have 3 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hello to all the witnesses. I don't have a lot of time, so I'll get straight to it. My questions are for Miss Andrea Proska. You mentioned that even though you had an interesting time as an athlete, it was difficult because of the abuses that you faced and because of the abuses against your fellow athletes. What are the processes that could have been implemented in order to protect you?
I know we have no time, so I'll fly through this. I didn't want to go, in my mind, nuclear and go straight to an appeals process. When I realized it, I tried to go through all the processes I could, which was talking to my support staff, talking to my mental health professional. None of those were able to get me to where I needed to be. And when I saw other teammates going through the appeals process, or when
But you spoke with them. People were aware, correct?
One more time, repeat the question. I know we have.
You talked to these people. Yes?
Them. I talked to my mental health professional, and I was at the time told that any complaint I had would go straight to my abuser. So I'm embarrassed to say, and that's why I feel like this, moral compass versus Olympic dream was so difficult for me, as I had to choose which did I want more. And in a way, there was almost an ownership to that, because I wasn't going to let him decide how far I got in sport. Unfortunately, not every one of my teammates had the same experience.
Et c'est tellement terrible.
And it's horrible to hear you say that you'd have blown everything up. What does that mean for you? That you probably would have had to give up your sport, if I understand correctly?
I strongly believe that if Dave Thompson hadn't been let go, I never would have made it to the Olympics. Period. End of sentence.
Andrea, vous avez parlé du...
Andrea, you talked about restorative justice. You gave a few elements, a few solutions, and you talked about restorative justice. What does that mean to you? How do you see it? How should we move forward with that possibility?
I think what it means is not making athletes take the stand unless absolutely necessary, not having to re-traumatize athletes. And I also think that we need to allow for an infrastructure that is whole to thrive as well. It's not just about bad actors. It's about the NSO that supported that. And in the same breath, it's also about the good actors, like my coach. While I flew home with a gold medal, she flew home with no job. And NSO was given an opportunity to build on a culture that was positive and creating positive change, happy, healthy athletes. 95% of C-suite women come from a background in sport. We're not just building medals here. We're building something bigger.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll let everybody know that my timer has run out now. So this is where my battery's dead. But I know that's good for you guys, right? So yeah, I know it's all good. You just use whatever time you want. Yasser, I'm now going to pass the floor over to you for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me just start by thanking Andrea to you for being here and your valiant effort in the work you're doing in making lives better for other athletes, especially female athletes. So thank you. This is really important work, and we're all listening to you. You were setting out some recommendations in your presentation, and the one that really caught my attention is around bystander training. Can you expand on what education you think is necessary, and how can OSIC play a role in that important education?
Great question. I can think there's a couple different levels I can go with this. One is that OSIC right now is limited in its scope to high-performance elite training. I would love to see a world in which we start from the grassroots up. It is so important that these athletes who are younger, who are indoctrinated. I went into this as a 27-year-old full adult person, and I still had issues with this. I worry about those athletes who are younger. I also worry about the support staff around me. You know, the heartbreaking story of a health staff member who was able to get up and leave and go. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't put the words to it, and she didn't have a pathway to say that was wrong. Bystander training on what grooming is incredibly important to recognize, to have that verbiage. I wish I can see it now. I wish I didn't have to go through what I did in order to see those.
Are there models out there in North America or beyond North America that you will point to and say, that's a good model when it comes to bystander training, and that's something Canada should look at replicating?
Well, I'd have to think about the bystander training. I will say that there's some really interesting adjacent things. So Norway has a system where it's kind of the pleasure of participation. Higher attendance in sport means higher talent in the long run. And then when it comes to, say, the registry, for example, also not, because we have issues with privacy laws, I know that's a really interesting topic, but I believe that the Netherlands has a call-in system, so it's not public, but you can still access that information. That's a surface-level information that I know, but there's lots of other organizations similar to Athletes Can in the world that I think we could also lean in on and tap into.
That's great. Thank you. Chair, do I have time? 38 seconds. If I can ask Karen O'Neill, same question around bystander training and what role does she think OSIC can play in such training?
Thanks very much for the question. I think that I would go well beyond OSIC, because OSIC has a particular focus right now to be able to get up and running, and all of us need to be able to support it as much as possible to kickstart in its initial role. I do think that the collective, whether it be the federal, provincial governments and the national organizations, can also build upon some of the other items that Ahmed spoke to earlier, particularly around some of the education and prevention, and also some of the bystander training. I would say, and Erica referred to it a little bit earlier, it's to even have the confidence to have voice to name the behavior. Oftentimes, and particularly from a Paralympic athlete standpoint, the desire to participate overrides the desire to call out behavior and not belong. So I think there are a number of different areas, even before bystander training, to be able to look at that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. 90 seconds to Audrey LaRoche.
Wow, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask a question of the Canadian Paralympic Committee. I was wondering whether or not there were any bursaries that were given to athletes for bronze, silver, or gold medals.
Thank you very much for asking the question. Currently, there is no performance funding available for medals. What we have done is, while we were in Beijing, this topic really came to the head, I would say, and we made a commitment with our partners to be able to initiate performance funding starting in Paris after the Paris Paralympic Games in 2024. The issue on this hand was that there was an inequitable representation for performance. You have the Olympic athletes who are receiving for bronze, silver, gold, $10,000, $15,000, and $20,000, and there were no funds at all to honor or reflect the performance of Paralympic athletes. So the goal is to provide an equitable acknowledgement of performance. Thank you for asking.
C'est une grande inéquité et la ministre s'est
It's a great inequity, and the minister is committed to changing that, and I hope that we'll be able to work on that, and I hope that we'll have an independent investigation. We're not done, Madam Chair. There's a lot left to do.
Well, you know, we speak faster, we get a lot in, right? So I get that. That's the way I roll too. Leah, 90 seconds.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. My question is for Madame Killens. Currently, you are not a signatory of the abuse-free sport program. Is that correct?
I'm
or
Chris, I think I'll pass this to
Neil.
I'll pass
Sorry,
this to Karen.
sorry.
Perhaps
I have the sorry.
No, that's okay. So Karen O'Neill with the Canadian Paralympic Committee.
Sorry.
It's absolutely fine. As an organization, there are three gateways to go through. The first one is the adoption and support of the UCCMS, which we have done. The second one is the integration into our policy suite, that the elements of the code that prohibit any kind of form of abuse or maltreatment, that is done. The third and outstanding gate for us to pass through is that all of those engaged within our organization have signed the waiver. And the waiver basically puts you in the system and the accountability structure of OSIC. We signed on we have a 3-month window, and we've completed the first 2 tranches, and we are just completing the third and final. So we're still well within the timeline. Absolutely no question about supporting the principle. It's the mechanics of being able to work it through for this third and final gateway.
So before we get started, we've got 7 seconds left. I'm stealing it from you. I would really, on behalf of all of the members here, I'd really like to thank all of you for coming and testifying in front of us. Today is one of our last days of taking testimony, so we'll be able to get to an extremely important report. So thank you very much. Just a reminder, if there's any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to contact the chair or the chair or the clerk if there's anything we do. We will be meeting once again on Monday. Change of schedule, but Danielle and I are working on it, and we'll let you know as soon as possible. Thanks. The meeting adjourned.